Have you ever heard someone mention the banned books of the Bible? Or maybe you've come across the phrase lost scriptures. They sound mysterious, don't they? Almost like there's a secret library hidden away, full of ancient wisdom that somebody didn't want you to read. But are these two things the same? And more importantly, why does it matter? Today, we're going to explore what people mean when they talk about banned books, what's considered lost scriptures, how the Bible we have today was shaped, and why these questions still stir so much passion. Stay with me, because the difference might change how you see the Bible, history, and maybe even your own faith. When people say banned, they usually don't mean that there was a single council where leaders slammed the door shut and ordered a giant book burning. It's more complex. The banned books of the Bible typically refer to ancient writings that were circulating during the early centuries of Christianity. Books like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the infancy Gospel of James, or the Book of Enoch. Some of these books were popular in certain communities. Others were quoted by church leaders. And a few, like the Book of Enoch, even made it into the official canon of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, but in most church traditions, they were eventually excluded. Why? Sometimes because the authorship was uncertain, sometimes because the teachings didn't align with the theology the early church recognized as apostolic, and sometimes because they came from groups like the Gnostics who had very different understandings of Jesus and salvation. So in many cases, banned is a bit of a dramatic word. These books weren't necessarily hunted down and destroyed, though that did happen in certain places. More often, they were simply left out. They were declared not inspired, not authoritative, not scripture. And over time, that silence looked like suppression. But here's the thought-provoking question. If these writings were circulating among believers, if they were shaping people's faith, why were they excluded? What truths or what dangers did they hold? Now let's look at lost scriptures. This phrase usually points to writings that were physically hidden away or forgotten for centuries, and only rediscovered in modern times. The most famous example is the Nag Hammadi Library, discovered in Egypt in 1945. Buried in clay jars, these texts included the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and other writings that gave scholars fresh insight into early Christian thought. Then there are the Dead Sea Scrolls, uncovered in the 1940s and 50s near Qumran. These scrolls contain copies of Old Testament books, as well as Jewish writings that showed us how diverse Jewish belief was around the time of Jesus. Lost scriptures isn't always about something being banned or suppressed. Sometimes it's about the reality of history. Fragile manuscripts crumble, communities disappear, wars destroy libraries, scrolls get buried in caves. For centuries, the world didn't even know these texts existed. And here's the provocative angle. When these writings suddenly reappear, they challenge us. They make us ask, what else might still be buried in the sands of time? And if new discoveries came tomorrow, how would that shake our understanding of faith today? Here's where things get interesting. Some books are both banned and lost. Take the Gospel of Thomas. It was known in early centuries, rejected by church councils, and eventually disappeared, only to resurface in the Nag Hammadi discovery in 1945. The Book of Enoch was quoted in the Book of Jude in the New Testament, widely read for a time, then dropped from the canon in most traditions. But it was preserved in Ethiopia, so in one part of the world it was lost. In another, it was still scripture. So banned and lost aren't the same, but they sometimes describe the same book, depending on where in history you're looking. Some people hear all this and feel disturbed. If the Bible left out books, how do we know what we have is complete? If there were writings that were hidden or lost, does that mean our faith is missing a piece? Others feel the opposite. They see these discoveries as confirmation that the Bible we have is unique. They argue, look at all these other writings. They came and went, but the canon we hold today endured. Maybe that's because God intended it. And then there are the curious seekers who simply want to know more, not to replace the Bible, but to understand the world in which it was formed, to hear the voices that were present in those early centuries, even if they weren't canonized. Wherever you land, the very fact that these questions exist forces us to wrestle with faith in a deeper way. It pushes us to ask, what do I believe about Scripture? Do I believe God speaks only through the 66 books Protestants hold, or the 73 books in the Catholic Bible, or the 81 in the Ethiopian canon? Do I believe God's voice is confined to canon lists? Or could he still speak through lost words, ancient stories, rediscovered texts? Let me throw a few questions at you. If a book like the Gospel of Mary had been included in the New Testament, how would our understanding of women in the church be different today? If the Book of Enoch had remained, with its vivid visions of angels and cosmic battles, would Christian imagination about the supernatural be stronger or more distorted? If we treat these texts as completely worthless, are we ignoring part of our heritage? But if we treat them as scripture, are we crossing a dangerous line? These are not easy questions, and that's exactly why they matter. Faith is not meant to be shallow. It's meant to challenge us, stretch us, make us dig deeper into what we believe and why. So here's the hidden truth. The Bible you hold in your hands is the result of history, debate, devotion, prayer, and controversy. The so-called banned books and lost scriptures are part of that story. They don't have to threaten your faith. They can deepen it. They can remind you that people have always wrestled with questions of truth, authority, and revelation. And maybe that's the biggest lesson. God's story is bigger than we think. Bigger than one tradition's canon. Bigger than the manuscripts we happen to discover. Bigger than our categories of banned and lost. Now, I want to hear from you. Which do you find more intriguing? The banned books or the lost scriptures? If you could read one of these ancient texts today, which would you choose and why? Drop your answer in the comments because your perspective adds to this conversation. And please, don't keep this discussion to yourself. Share this video with a friend who loves his history, faith, or a good mystery. You never know. Your share might spark a conversation that changes how someone sees the Bible forever. If this video stirred your thoughts, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We'll keep diving into questions that make faith real, raw, and relevant. Because faith grows stronger not when we avoid hard questions, but when we face them together.